Come on in.
Thank you.
Well, these look familiar.
Yeah. That's so cool that you got these.
Isn't that like,
Very cool.
these all came in just about a week.
You know, I believe, and somebody like Lauren Peterson or Steve Golly would be able to say, but I think these came from a store in San Anselmo.
That's what I understand.
Gunning's Hobbies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the construction of these is incredibly persnickety.
Yeah.
Like these are beautifully made shelves with all this. This is like laminate on here. They made tons of these little sliders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Fogler was here and he said, you got to put models on top. So I've found every model in my storage spaces and loaded them up here.
That's wonderful.
Joe Johnston's signature's on the back of the right-hand one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Adam Savage in my cave with my old colleague, Don Bies. How are you, sir?
Hi, Adam. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you here. I worked with Don back in ILM days, but your tenure with Industrial Light and Magic goes way past the late 90s when I first met you.
Yeah. Technically, I started there in 87.
87?
Yeah. So my first introduction to ILM as an employee was I was a puppeteer on Witches of Eastwick. So,
tell me how you come about being a puppeteer on Witches of Eastwick.
So my film career started at Chris Wayless's company, Chris Wayless Incorporated.
Up in Marin.
In Marin, yeah. And so one of the guys I worked with a lot there and became a mentor was John Berg.
Gotcha.
And so...
And Chris did like Gremlins, Naked Lunch,
Enemy
The Fly,
Mine.
Enemy Mine.
Yeah, so we worked together on The Fly, or I worked on The Fly with them. You know, it was me and, you know, this crew of 30 or something like that. Anyway, so John became a good friend, a mentor, still to this day. Turns out we had the same birthday, number of years apart, but we still have we had the same birthday. So we became good friends, and he was somehow... So Rob Bottin created the puppet for Witches of Eastwick.
The puppet of...
Jack Nicholson.
That like really weird distorted puppet at the end?
Yeah, with the long neck and everything.
I didn't know that was Bottin.
Yeah. So there was some weird union rule where, you know, typically, as you know, you make something, you get to operate it.
Right.
But because, again, some weird union rule, his crew couldn't operate it. So they had to hire a local team. So they had built it in LA. They came up to San Rafael to shoot it at ILM. And so they needed like 25 people to operate this thing. It was like everything.
Yeah. Oh, because it's moving in subtle ways all over the place.
And it was very analog, you know, it was just big levers and stuff like that. My job was the tongue.
Really?
I made the tongue come out, you know. And so, you know, it's so anyway, so John called everybody he knew in the area. And, you know, Mark Wayless was on it, Howie Weed, Bob Cooper, just a ton of people. First time I met a lot of these people. And we sat in the beautiful Marin sun for a week shooting different versions or different scenes of this with this puppet. And again, my job was like,
tongue in, tongue out.
I think I might have had a thing that made the tongue split too, but yeah.
I want to go actually back even farther than that. Talk to me about young Don Bies and your first intersection with making things that might end up being models professionally.
Yeah, so what I was taken by originally with film was makeup. Was special effects makeup, and it all started. You know, when I was like 6 years old, I had an older cousin that thought she'd try to scare me by showing me Frankenstein, Boris Karloff's Frankenstein, and it did exactly the opposite.
It just fascinated you.
It's like, how did they make that guy look like that? Yeah. You know, and so I asked my mother, and she's, you know, it's makeup, and again, to me, makeup was mascara and you know, lipstick and that sort of thing. So no, it's a special kind of makeup. So she found Famous Monsters of Filmland. Mm-hmm. And then through that was Dick Smith, who's the godfather of modern makeup effects.
Did you write to him as a kid?
I talked to him.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I sent him my stuff, and he was brutal.
Amazing.
Yeah. It kind of like discouraged me from...
Oh, wow. He gave real honest feedback.
Yeah. And he was totally right.
Right.
I mean, you know, what my stuff was crude. My stuff was, you know, amateurish, and he was totally right.
So you found him in the phone book? How did you talk to him?
I'm trying to remember how I got him, but he was living in Larchmont. This was like 1981, 82.
That's upstate New York.
Yeah. And near New Rochelle, where Dick Van Dyke lived. That's what, or Rob Petrie. yeah, I guess he was. I don't know how I would have known where he was. I mean, he just was in everything.
Yeah.
But he had put through Famous Monsters of Filmland. He had put out a how to makeup
Right.
thing,
Which probably
and
had his home address on it.
It could have. I don't know.
Yeah.
I good question. I don't know how I got a hold of him.
I've run into so many people who, as kids, like Rick Baker, wrote to Dick Smith and got letters back and started a correspondence. Richard Taylor from Weta Workshop, Guillermo del Toro, like Dick Smith just wrote back to everyone, and I love that.
I think anybody that was in the makeup industry in the 80s when it was so big with everybody had a similar story.
Amazing.
And because of what he did, because he was so open with his knowledge and everything like that, I vowed that if I ever had something that someone would need to know that I knew, I would give it to them freely.
This is literally going to be a question I was going to ask later on today because of yours and my contribution to the R2 Builders group and your ethos, which I encountered really early on with you, which is like, information is for sharing.
Yeah.
And
ILM was always like that.
I agree.
You could do anything at ILM. I felt there was somebody there that had the answer. If you couldn't figure it out yourself, go to Charlie Bailey, you go to Lauren Peterson, go to Steve Gall. Any of them knew. And
then you'd get some great story. Yeah. Like, well, I was sitting there trying to get James Earl Jones.
Like Lauren's one of my favorite techniques that he did. I think he first did it on Galactica, and then we did it on another film years later. Was take sand, soak it in alcohol, and put a balloon behind it, and then you pack it in and you kind of sculpt it like rock, and then you pop the balloon after the alcohol dissipates.
Yeah.
And it roughly holds that shape.
Oh, after the alcohol sublimates.
Yeah. And it roughly holds that shape. And then when you pop it, it looks like it's an explosion in the side of a mountain. And it's like, that is so cool. How'd you figure that out?
I remember asking him why the Naboo waterfalls. And I was like, how come you're using salt? And he's like, because we use sugar. And then the ants came.
Yeah.
So you send some of your makeup pictures to Dick Smith. He discourages you, but you still keep making stuff.
Yeah. Well, I realized too that one of the things that I was never good at was painting. I was not a painterly artist. I could age things, but not really paint. And so that was a big roadblock in my makeup career.
Yeah.
I could sculpt. I felt I was a pretty decent sculptor. But what I realized, I had more of a mechanical side of things. I was really fascinated with, I remember writing up a sketch, and I sent this to Dick Smith, on how to do a extendo fang thing.
Like open your mouth and your fangs
come out. Yeah. And, because I heard Rob Bottin had done something like that for some film, Howling, I think.
The Howling?
Yeah. And it was this complicated it wasn't that complicated, but push rods and stuff like that. You use your tongue. And so I came up with a sketch for that, and he it's not so much complimented me on, but he says, it's kind of like, I think, and he explained to me how Rob did it, and
fascinating.
But I realized that I was more of a mechanical guy. I was more, I leaned towards that sort of stuff. And making things move, and the whole thing with R2 and. Did
you make any early animatronics?
I did like yes, I did a head. I remember where I was trying to do eye blinks, and I'm trying to remember my dad was an electrician. He worked at a factory, and he was an electrician, and he would bring home like great stuff. It wasn't until years later I found he was taking it from me. He would tell me he bought it at Wagner's, which was the store, down the street from the factory. It's like, oh, wait a minute. And he never went to Wagner's. But I would use the metal perforated tape, like plumber's.
Yeah,
it's called
plumber's tape. I know.
And I would use that to make the skull structure. And then from there. So I had a little like drill press. I had a table saw, hand tools and stuff that I would make all that stuff. So I did do that. I did, I think, a hand mechanism. I was very proud of the fact that I was able to make a hand mechanism that when you moved one lever here, they all curled.
Right. Was it X braces bringing it down like linkages?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I just kind of discovered that all by myself.
Oh, that's cool.
Did
you go to school for it? Did you end up going to college?
No. So I wanted to go to film school. I was really wanted to just be a filmmaker,
Yeah,
you know. And I was accepted into Columbia College in Chicago. And I went to the orientation, and it terrified me. It's like, I don't, you know, one, I wasn't really big in school anyway. I wasn't that good. And another 4 years of doing this and everything. And it helped my parents out financially if I didn't do it.
Right,
you know?
right.
But so I didn't go. So I got into theater in Chicago. I did a lot of theater. So I was doing props and set building, and I did a little acting myself. And so that was just learning as you go. So.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, but you know, it's always, I know you've talked about this. What's the term for, like, you don't think you're good enough?
Imposter complex.
Syndrome. Yeah. Totally had that. Still do to this day. You know, it's like, and I think everybody at ILM had that too.
Yeah.
You know, to a certain point.
Well, it was that thing that there was so much brilliance moving around, and everyone was so marvelously cavalier about it. I remember the first time I solved a problem that had other people coming by my desk.
Yeah.
Where Lauren was like, "Hey, you got to go see what Adam's working on."
Yeah.
That was exciting to finally be part of the plasma pool.
Yeah, I remember when I did the head for C-3PO for the in episode 1, the one that's
the uncovered, the naked.
Yeah. And you know, I was, as you know, was really big into laser cutting at that point, and I was doing. I found any excuse to use laser.
You were my laser cutting consigliere back then.
Yes, we spent a lot of time in the laser cutter room, and I think I was actually in the room when you found out you were going to have twins.
Yep. I was in the laser room when I got the call from the doctor. Yeah. Amazing.
So anyway, I needed to make this head, and everybody was, you know, doing vacuum form arm things and armatures and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, I could do it, you know, like an IKEA thing, but where you slot things together and everything. So I made the shape of it, and I think it was Lauren that had a actual gyro sitting on his desk, and we took that as the inspiration. So I just kind of measured that out, and I made the shape of the head inside with that. We even had a little spinning gyro thing in there that Grant took a servo and just made the inside spin. And so I made that, and that's the first time maybe the only time I impressed Lauren Peterson. and he was kind of like, "Oh, that's great. Well, that's really good. You did a great job." And Steve Gawley goes, "Well, he just used a laser cutter." He says, "Yeah, but he knew what he was doing."
There was some laser cutter gatekeeping there.
We laser cut. We needed to make, what was it for? I think it was for Planet Hollywood R2-D2.
Oh.
And we needed a hologram eye. We laser cut
the plastruct.
The plastruct, yeah. And that was, I think it was Fawn that first tried it. It must have been after, because we didn't. I think for Planet Hollywood we didn't have the laser cutter.
So do you use like one of the ones that went over the ones that went inside of it to create the housing?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little too thick. It's a little too. But what was interesting is looking down and projecting down onto it and realizing that on the hologram eye, that it's actually a square with rounded corners. It's not
really.
Yeah, it's not like this fancy shape or anything like that. It was like, oh, that's just a square. But because it's on the ellipse and everything, it looks different. And I think it was Fawn that engineered the idea of changing the focus, because otherwise what would happen when you're coming down with the laser, if you got to cut it way out
it's
here,
going to be a wide beam down
there.
Right.
So you would do a bunch of stepped cuts, that it would, it was a little closer here, farther here, a little closer, and so forth, so that you got more of a consistent cut.
And that was to get that strange square.
Yeah, like I said, it's a square from the top. I'm pretty sure it was. I mean, that's how I drew it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, really funny. This is an aside, but it's a thing that you and I connected over really early working on that First Union Bank commercial, right? I was working on the tower, and you were laser cutting with me, and I had learned how to build models starting with these paper books. So I thought of everything orthogonally, and that's a great training to have when you have a laser cutter in front of you, because you and I remember we would have this ethos of like, I'm going to cut out a bunch of parts with a laser cutter, and I want to cut them all out once.
Yeah.
I want to get this thing assembled on the first try. And
Right.
it's immaterial, right? It's
Yeah.
fine. There's going to be iterations, but still there was like you wanted to get it in one pass.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had a similar thing where it's like, because I started doing machining, I was really familiar with an XY coordinate system. And that just translated so easily to the laser cutter,
yeah.
and the CAD programs and stuff that we were using.
So how did you end up going from theater? Because it's a big transition to move from theater into film. How did that occur for you?
Well, it was actually because of that. So my brother lives in Chicago, and he's a pediatrist, a pediatrist surgeon, and he had a customer client that he was doing some work on, and my brother had these anatomical models of feet and other body parts and stuff like that. And the guy goes, "Oh, my kid would love that." And he goes, "Why is that?" He says, "Oh, he's really into monster makeup and stuff." And he said, "Oh, so is my brother." He says, we should connect them." So we did, and his name is Keith Edmeyer, and Keith was this amazing, everything I wasn't as a makeup artist, he was. And he was tight with Dick Smith, and even Rick Baker, he had reached out to and everything. And he at 16 years old, he was doing this amazing sculpts and this and that and the other thing. So we did, one of the things I did was a production of Frankenstein, which was
a theater production.
A theater production of Frankenstein that actually, it was an ill-fated Broadway production that closed in like one performance. But it's like, it's Frankenstein, And so I had Keith do the makeup for me, and he did this one-piece foam latex appliance that was more similar to what Mary Shelley described the monster to be. And so we Keith and I had done a couple different projects. Yeah, I helped him with a couple school things. Like, he was 5-6 years younger than me.
Yeah,
I was I was college age, and he was still in high school. So when we were doing this stuff, and but like I said, he was just this amazing artist already. And so then he went off to LA and got a job with Rick Baker, and then we would keep in touch. And then he said, "Oh, I hear there's I'm going to go work for a guy named Chris Wayless. He's up in
near you,
Northern
where you were."
Well, I was still in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. And he goes, "Yeah, they're looking for a bunch of people." And it's like, oh. So I sent him, again, thinking I'm going to be the next Rick Baker. I sent him my portfolio of my sculpts and my makeups and stuff that I did, and which I still have to this day. And
amazing.
And then included in it was the R2-D2 that I built when Star Wars came out. I built a full-size radio control R2.
I don't think I knew that you built a full-size R2 when Star Wars came out.
Yeah, it was my favorite character. And so Chris calls me up for a phone interview. And he's going through the portfolio, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's just typical gore stuff, body parts and old age makeup." And he says, "But tell me about this R2 thing." And I said, "Oh yeah, I built that as a radio." I was like, "That I'm not doing that. I'm doing makeup."
Right.
And he goes, "Well, we are looking for someone in mechanical department." And he says, "So you can use a mill and a lathe?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I didn't know what a mill was. I knew what a drill press was, but I didn't know what a mill was. So I can do all that.
The answer is always yes.
So a week or so goes by. He says, "Okay, yeah, we'd love for you to come out and work out here." And so packed up.
Wow.
And moved out.
Moved?
Yeah, moved cross country. And it was like guaranteed work of only like 3 months or something like that. But like I said, I met, like Mark Wayless and John Berg, of course, and numerous other people. And there was a really great guy, Kelly Lepkowski. I don't know if you remember Kelly. He briefly worked at ILM when we were all there. Kelly ended up being a mentor in the machine shop for me. He caught on real quick. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And
I had a couple of those. Chris Rand was that for me. He would just scowl at my setups.
Yeah, I know Chris, and I could see the scowl. Yeah. Kelly wasn't a scowler. Kelly was a little more jovial. Kelly helped me through it all, and I continued to work there. So, and then I got to work. I was paired with John Berg, and we built the big creature at the end of that Jeff Goldblum turns into. We called it the space bug, but it was a big
At the end of The Fly.
Yeah, the big mutant thing that he turns into.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
That really sad creature.
Yeah, and then but I did a couple different rigs and a lot of stuff that got cut. You know, not because of my rigs, but it was just time and grossness and stuff like that.
I broke out the sci-fi weapons. I thought you might. Want to see
Nice.
These.
Yes.
There's my You built this one.
Yeah, so I'll have to show you mine. Yeah. And this is the not the Denex.
It's not. This is one of those kits.
Right.
So this is, I think, a ton of custom work.
So when I was at the archives, we had boxes and boxes of Stormtrooper blasters.
Right.
And they were all metal. There were a number of plastic ones and rubber ones for stunts, but they were all metal. And in the box, again, this was in the late 80s or early 90s, in the box was a catalog from something Armory. It was a replica something Armory. And in it was the
all the E11s,
the Sterling,
the Sterling
submachine gun that you could buy. And it's like, oh, I wish it was gone, but they didn't they don't make it
of
anymore.
Course.
But I always wanted a Stormtrooper blaster, but and then I even looked at getting decommissioned Sterlings, but those are kind of expensive.
They are.
I always loved this gun. I like this version of the gun. The New Hope one, I guess it's called, because of the scope. Because they didn't do that with the
what was the difference with the other one? It was
the
scope sits on top.
I think it was smaller.
Oh, right. The little the tank scope.
Yeah, and then these were silver on some versions, but I think those were supposed to be other guns. I mean, we never had at the archives. We never had the guns except the Stormtrooper blasters.
Oh, those were
Bapti. Well, Bapti.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
they were a lot of them were rentals too.
Yeah, and they were real guns, so they wouldn't have shipped them. But yeah.
So, did you first get to after working at CWI for a while? Did you first get to ILM in the model shop, or did you because you spent your first time at ILM up at the archives? Am I right?
Well, no, I did the bit with the puppeteering.
Right.
And then that same year, so that was like April or so of '87, and then that summer. Lucasfilm.
Hang on just a second. It's pretty loud. I just thought maybe pause. Sorry, there's weird road work going on out front. Like right out front. Like all the trucks are parked right in front of my front door. That's probably all right. All right, sorry, go ahead.
So the first thing I did was the puppeteering, which is Vswick. And then in summer of '87, Lucasfilm was contracted through Panasonic of Japan, Matsushita of Japan, to be the spokesman for Panasonic in Japan, and George in particular was the face of Panasonic. Wow. So they scheduled all these commercials to do with the Star Wars characters and George Lucas. Well, that same year also Star Tours opened in Los Angeles. And it was the 10th anniversary of Star Wars as well. So there was a guy that did R2-D2, that was the R2-D2 personal appearance operator. And he went down named David Schaefer, and he went down to Los Angeles for the opening Star Tours, got an interview with who's the mechanical guys from Disney.
The Imagineers.
Imagineers, yeah. And he got a job. And so now this gig was coming up. It was going to be a 3-year off and on gig of R2 and C-3PO and Chewbacca and Darth Vader, and they didn't have an R2 operator. So David and I had worked at a small shop doing some Christmas window displays. He was a electronics engineer, and I was doing mechanical stuff. And he knew about my R2 and all that I had done. So he recommended me for the job. So I got the job to be R2 operator.
I didn't realize the R2 business was one of the earliest inflection points.
The second official R2 operator. And
amazing.
And so we so I got the job. So my first day on set was with Anthony Daniels, George Lucas, Peter Mayhew. We didn't have David Prowse as Darth Vader. We had a local actor, Tom Bewley, and then we did this series of commercials that you could find on YouTube. You know?
Amazing.
And they were insane, and it was insane production. It was so much fun. You know, it's like
in Japan. You're filming?
No, we were at ILM. We were on the main stage. No, George didn't want to travel. So we stayed at ILM, and we did a couple commercials in LA.
Yeah.
Without George, you know, that we flew down 2 Ewoks and Peter Mayhew and me. That was a fun one because they insisted, the Japanese being so particular, so precise with their planning and scheduling and everything. They insisted that I come down like a day early and have a meeting with them. And I'm like, well, sure, you know, it didn't matter to me. So we flew down there, and Peter was down there. And by that point, I already had met Peter before. And they got us to the airport, to the office at 10 a.m. And we have this meeting that lasts about 15 minutes. And then they're like, okay, you're free to go. Did you want to go anywhere? And Peter and I looked at it. It's like, oh, that's it. That's all we needed to be here for. This could have been a phone call.
Should have been an email.
So, and I said to Peter, I said, what do you want to do? He says, I want to go to Venice Beach. So they drove us to Venice Beach. So Peter and I are just walking up and down Venice Beach talking, and he's telling me Star Wars stories. And then we wound up at a bar at noon in the hotel.
And this is all like right when, I mean, Jedi's only 4 years before. This is really early on. In the...
Oh, it was unfiltered Peter Mayhew stories. You know, stories that he eventually told over and over at conventions and stuff. But this was probably might have been the first time he was telling them. Wow. You know, with a rapt audience. You know,
I had dinner with him later in his life a few times, and he was so incredibly sweet. I'm assuming that must have been the same back then.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was just, you know, he was just a wonderful storyteller, actually. And same thing with Kenny Baker. Kenny was like that too, and yeah, they just had fun. They were just having fun. You know?
Did you come to ILM from a place of fandom? Did Star Wars?
Totally.
Okay, Star Wars was really important when it came out.
So when Star Wars came out, I had just turned 16. I got my driver's license, so I had freedom. I had my first job. My first job was at an amusement park. It was the first indoor amusement park in the United States. It was called Old Chicago. And it was outside of Chicago, but it was an indoor amusement park. And they decided to film a Brian De Palma film there called The Fury.
Oh, wow.
And,
I remember The Fury.
Yeah, it was his follow-up to Carrie.
Yeah.
You know, Amy Irving's in it. Kirk Douglas is in it. I never met them. But I did meet Andrew Stevens, who is Stella Stevens' son, right? And
Stella Stevens.
The actress.
Oh, right. I'm so sorry.
Poseidon Adventure and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, so this Hollywood crew invades Old Chicago.
Yeah.
And then of course Star Wars came out that same year. So it's like, okay, well, this is it. I mean, the writing's on the wall. I've got to do this.
You want to be in this mix.
Yeah. So I was, my job was one of the barkers at the games, you know, come and play the shooting up game or throw the ball at the clowns or whatever. And so the special, I was manning the BB gun. There was a BB gun target game. And, so the special effects guys would come over, you know, the guys that were rigging. Yeah. So what happens in the story is that Andrew Stevens' character is psychokinetic, and he has a thing against these Arabs because he thinks they killed his father. And, you know, this is through the oil crisis. So Arabs were real popular villains at that point, I guess. And so there's an Arab contingent that has nothing to do with his father, but they come to the park to just enjoy themselves. And he sees them on a ride, and he puts the ride through a window. So, and kills them, you know. So, and he had this great appliance that, you know, was veins on his forehead that pulsed, right? So found out later, Dick Smith made that appliance.
Amazing, right?
And William Tuttle applied it.
William Tuttle.
Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, A Time Machine. So he was there. Well, you know, so I got to meet all these guys,
Wow.
and then the special effects guys would come over and do the shooting gun and game and stuff. And the head of the team was a guy named A.D. Flowers. Now, A.D. Flowers started out as a greensman on Wizard of Oz, but he eventually did Tora, Towering Inferno, Poseidon Adventure, all the mechanical effects for that stuff.
Wow.
I knew all these guys' names, even at that age. So I got
this is like the perfect confluence.
I know it was. It's like the writing's on the wall. So, so I got to watch. I asked William Tuttle, "Can I watch you put the appliance?" No, but I got to meet Andrew Stevens, and again, the special effects guys. I got to be there when they put the ride through and it was great because what they did is they had the ride was on the end of this track on a little trolley. And it went through a series of pulleys, and at the end of the pulley, it was a cable. Back there was a pickup truck.
Yep,
and so
classic.
they just pulled it, and the thing just went along that track. And then right at the end, it had a little lever that flipped the thing right through the glass window. So I collected afterwards. I collected the sugar glass window and the balsa wood frames.
Oh, of course you did.
And I still have a little bucket of it. So yeah, so that was my introduction to film. So. I had to do it.
Clearly. Clearly.
So.
Okay, so tell me about how you end up at the archives, because this is in the early days of the archives. Where, look, not a lot of big companies have their own archives except for the big studios.
Right.
But Lucasfilm has a pretty substantial archive when you take it over. Am I right?
Yeah. So what happened was that at the end of Jedi, George collected all the stuff. You see that famous photo of him. That was all a collection for that photo. It was all the stuff that was at that point. They put it all on the main stage at ILM. Everyone took their picture. There's pictures of Lauren, Joe Johnson. Everybody had a picture like that at the time. This was '83, mind you. I was before me. But and George entrusted Debbie Fine, who was his lead researcher at the time. She has a great story. She goes back to she worked for Francis on The Godfather and stuff. So Francis Ford Coppola, that is.
Yeah.
So he entrusted her to archive and catalog this stuff. Well, she wasn't that. Didn't want. She had other things to do. So she eventually hired a guy named David Craig, and David, in addition to being the unofficial first archivist, he was also he helped PR with press releases and things like that. This is the so-called dark time of Lucasfilm, where it was after Return of the Jedi, after Star Wars. George didn't want to do Star Wars or anything.
He wanted to wrap it up.
Yeah, they did the Ewok movies, but that but that was the only thing Star Wars happening. He wanted to do other projects.
Yeah,
and so there wasn't a whole lot of Star Wars going on. So. So everything was crammed into several little warehouses all around ILM, and unheated, unconditioned rooms, and then David was entrusted, who he didn't have any archival background whatsoever, but he was entrusted with starting to catalog these, and then I came along in '87. I think David and I crossed over just briefly. But David left, and then there was really nobody to look after the stuff. So I came along in '87, and then in '88, so Lucasfilm, George wanted to move ILM out to the ranch, or to a ranch near the ranch. It's called the Grady Ranch, and which is on Lucas Valley Road, and he was coming up against a lot of negativity with the neighbors and the Marin County Board of Supervisors and that sort of thing. And so as a kind of a goodwill gesture towards the community, for years he had been asked to do something at the Marin County Fair every year. So he out of, like I said, goodwill for this project and everything, he agreed to put an exhibition on at the Marin County Fair. And so the lady that hired me for the R2 operating knew that I was a big Star Wars fan, and David is already gone now, so she asked me to help her organize this exhibition. So it was the first big exhibition of Lucasfilm memorabilia. It just wasn't Star Wars. Now they were off shooting Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade at that point.
Right.
So I think all we had was a hat and a jacket and the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And the matte painting from the Ark of the Covenant. And that was it. But we had all the Star Wars stuff. We had Willow was coming out that year. Tucker was coming out that year. We had we had a Tucker there, and we took over this one big exhibition hall at the Marin County Fair.
This is the most beautiful, beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright building.
Yeah,
the Marin,
exactly,
the Marin Public Arts Center.
It was where the theater is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think at the theater they were showing like reels of ILM or something like that. They were just trying to do everything to say, hey, we're really good neighbors.
Yeah, totally.
And the exhibition had something like 43,000 people come through in 5 days.
Wow.
There were literally 2-3 hour long lines to get in, and fire department was there to maintain the amount of flow and all this. We had people threatening our senior citizen security people to try to get in through the back door. One guy comes up to this little old lady and said, shows him, has a knife in his sleeve and says, "You will let me in." She goes, "Son, it's not worth it." And he turns around and walks away.
Oh my gosh.
So anyways, this is huge exhibition. It was hugely successful.
Yeah.
And then it's like, the stuff that's sitting here,
it could do some stuff.
we could pay us, pay us. So then all of a sudden the wheels are turning at Lucasfilm, and they created a company. So because of that, after how I got in the archives was, when that was all wrapped up, it's like, maybe we should take care of this stuff. So we'll hire you for a couple weeks to start organizing it.
Right.
And that
just
2 weeks
snowballs.
Ended up 8 years.
Wow.
And then, but in between, when I was at ILM, when I was at the archives, I was in between jobs. I would go to ILM.
So you were part of the
I was
whole
bouncing back for it. So it's kind of like I always had a job, which was great.
Amazing.
So the ILM job would end. I'd just call up Debbie, say I'm back again, and she's like, okay.
You told me back then that like things were pretty loose back then. Like you might wander back into the archives and see an employee just wearing Harrison Ford's Raider costume and taking a selfie.
It might have been me. We did so eventually the archives was collated and brought all to the ranch. We built they built a proper archive building, somewhat proper archive building, and everything was moved up there. And then in '93 there was this whole history of exhibition ideas that was happening, and it didn't happen until '93 that an actual exhibition was being paid for outside of Lucasfilm.
That was the one that went to Yerba Buena Center for the Arts?
No, it was a Japan one.
Oh, okay.
It was the very first one. The Yerba Buena was the second one. And so as part of that, we had to do a bunch of restoration on stuff. So I hired a bunch of model makers from ILM. But then, yes, we played dress up. So yeah. Not everybody had a key to the thing. I was the keeper of the key. Of course, security had a key. But yes, there was kind of loose. And we used to, Grant actually, I met Grant, at Skywalker Ranch when he was like 22 or 23 years old.
He was up there at Skywalker Sound.
He was at THX.
That's it, right?
Yeah, THX, yeah. And he was just initially an intern, and then he became an employee there. And I remember the very first day I met him, is like, who's this goofy kid? Because somebody was walking and he grabbed onto their leg and she was dragging him. Who's this moron? And anyway, so then he would join us for lunch. It was a group of friends that we would always get together for lunch.
He did some electronics for you in the archives before he moved to the model shop.
Well, yeah, because I found out that he was an electronics engineer, and R2 was always an issue,
Right.
And so, hey, you want to help fix up R2? Yeah. Hey, we're doing this Darth Vader project where we need him to breathe electronically. You want to do that? Yeah. So he would just come up after work.
Amazing.
And hang out, or we'd go there on weekends and just hang out. So, but
you guys ended up also working on the Energizer bunnies together.
That was at ILM. Yeah. So because of Nelson Hall and I, Nelson was the one that really pushed them to go to ILM and say, you shouldn't be here. Your talents are wasted here. Go to ILM. And so
I didn't realize that Nelson said that to him. That's great.
And Nelson introduced him to people like Lauren and I backed it up and eventually, he got hired and it was the best thing that ever happened. But yes, but he had this thing that because we had the archives, we had the keys to the toy, the castle kind of thing. Nelson and I were up there, and Grant, of course, was still up there and everything. If we'd see somebody that we would like to give a tour to, we would say, "Hey, you don't want to come over to the archives?" And we did this with some celebrities.
So that's how you got to meet some great celebrities?
Yeah.
Nice.
And we were having lunch one day, and there's Graham Nash from Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Nelson was a huge Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Up at the big house, up at the ranch. Yeah.
And so he said he saw who he was talking to. He knew that guy. He says, "Hey, would you like to come up to the archives?" And he'd say, "Yeah." So they came up. So Grant called it using our powers for evil.
Yeah. That's using them for evil?
Yeah. Because we would, it was totally self-serving. We just wanted to meet these people,
Yeah. But they got something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so did we.
Yeah.
Nelson actually with Graham Nash, struck up a friendship with him. Graham asked if he said, "I'm coming back in a few weeks. Can I bring my son who was 16 or something at the time?" He says, "Yeah." So he came up and he started a friendship with him. And it was so funny, like years later, we're on the set of episode 2. We're shooting in London. We had shot in Sydney and then we went to London for pickups for 3 weeks on episode 2. And it was my son's 4th birthday. And he came to the set and everybody sang happy birthday to him. But one of the friends of Hayden Christensen was Graham Nash's son.
Oh my gosh.
And he remembered me.
What a tiny world.
He remembered me from that. But I got to meet Annie Leibovitz.
Oh, right. Of course, she took a photo of your beautiful crate with R2 and you.
Yeah. Well, I was photographed 4 or 5 times by Annie Leibovitz.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Chuck Jones from Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
So,
I always say to people that like a life looks fairly linear from the current vantage point, but like looking back at it, you must be pretty chuffed about how it all latticed out.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it was one of those things that, I never would have guessed that wandering path. Never quite got into the filmmaking. Well, I did a little bit, but in the filmmaking aspect of it. But yeah,
you made that R2D2 documentary. I remember Tori Belleci being in that.
Yeah, and Mike Renane.
And Mike Renane.
Yeah. Well, everybody was Grants. And we.
So I feel like eventually these will go into a makerspace, right?
Yeah.
Like I said to Sean, I just want to be the steward of them keep them together. And keep them for shopping for our community, and then someday they'll go into a nice big makerspace.
Well, it's so cool that you got it. That you kept them, and I mean, just what you're doing for the maker community is just absolutely astounding.
Thank you. I just felt like I had the space.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not make the call and bring it in?
Yeah.